bust it. Shake and bake and pull it back.
Oh my God.
Let me show you something. Hold on and get some, boys.
That is why they gonna be.
But
I'm Robert Kirkman. Keep digging in those long boxes.
Ken Lashley didn't tell us anything, by the way. Ryan, let's kick it off with the news of the week. What do we got?
Well, let's start it off. We got some Swamp Thing trailers, but then Marvel was like, hey, this might be a good time for some Man-Thing on Hulu.
You know what? This is a Black Knight exclusive. The Man-Thing is being fast-tracked for development at Hulu. He will eventually join Ghost Rider, Hellstrom, and Satana as part of the Spirits of Vengeance. Know your word if he'll receive his own show, but he's going to appear with the other horror characters. And if you remember, we just talked about this maybe last week, was it, or 2 weeks ago? There's so much news now that drops. But we were talking about Ghost Rider and Hellstrom. Marvel is picking their adult-themed stuff, supernatural stuff, and going to push it on Hulu since they are full partner ownership of Hulu. Remember, we've been talking about this, guys.
Yes,
we've been talking about this, man. We use the information we had, we gathered, and we put this now that we've gotten that information, we're getting more information. So Man-Thing is coming. And it's kind of funny if you think about it, and Otto is going to touch on this in a second, that Swamp Thing and Man-Thing have kind of had this symbiotic relationship ever since they came out in the comics, and now they're both going to appear on a streaming service almost within a year of each other. Give us the breakdown on Man-Thing. What is the Man-Thing? Where did it come from? Who created this beast?
right. So this is a bit of a funny story about Man-Thing because you really never cared about Man-Thing. Swamp Thing always took precedence over
I care about my Man-Thing.
That's right.
The giant size Man-Thing. Come on, let's get it right. Let's get it right.
Get your Man-Thing check too, for all those guys out there.
Oh.
So anyway, a little public service announcement. So Man-Thing, this has been an ongoing issue. What came first, the chicken or the egg? Did Man-Thing come first or Swamp Thing came first? Really, neither of them did, you guys. And I'll be completely honest with you. Neither of them did. They both were spawned from a character that came out in 1942.
Pay attention, folks.
Called the Heap. Okay,
That's right.
The Heap was from Airboy Comics, and the Heap was the same type of character as Man-Thing and Swamp Thing, just a little bit more dated. And the Heap actually ran until 1953, so it ran for many, many years. Roy Thomas was very enamored with this character, okay? So he went to Stan Lee and talked about how he had this idea for this character called Man-Thing. At the time, Conway and Len Wein were roommates, okay? And both of them had ideas of certain characters. Roy loved both of them, all right? But Len went to go work for DC at the time, and Conway stayed with Marvel. Then what happened was Roy loved the idea so much what Conway had. He went to Stan and said, Stan, I got this idea for this guy called Man-Thing. We really want it to work. It's a great idea. He's going to be a scientist, and it has something to do with AIM is involved with it, and he gets converted and changed, and he's got these powers. And Stan goes, stop, I don't like this. And Roy goes, why? What's the problem with this? And he goes, we already have a thing. We can't have the Man-Thing and the thing. So Stan said, well, give it a chance. Let me try it. And, Roy was always Stan's golden boy, right? We know that for many, many years. And if you get a chance to talk to Roy Thomas, he's incredibly insightful. He's got so many great stories, and he's a fan, and he'll tell you about this. So the Heap came first. Man-Thing came out in May of 1971. And then it was the Swamp Thing that came out in June of 71.
Yeah,
So
Man-Thing actually published first.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. And if you were going after it, the first book that you want to find Man-Thing is Savage Tales number 1, where that's the black and white magazine. You've seen it before. It's got Conan on a cover, and it was only 11 pages long in that story. So it really didn't last that long.
Hard to find in high grade too, because of the magazine format. So for those speculating out there, first true appearance of Man-Thing is and in the Bronze Age, a lot of Marvel titles had first appearances in these magazines, right? They were kind of like they were little trial runs to see if they got hot, and then eventually they would get hot. So Savage Tales number 1, first appearance of your Man-Thing, and an already fucking cover at that too.
Yeah, really cool cover. But what happened was it really dug it. And you know how Stan has his Stan soapbox and stuff like that. A lot of people wrote in and said how they really liked it. So then that gave Roy the premise to talk to Conway. And really, the first appearance of Man-Thing on the cover was Adventures into Fear number 10.
That's your next spec book, guys.
Yeah, that's another spec book that you might want to look at. And then we all know that Strange Tales, that first issue was oh my God, Strange Tales, Adventures. Where was it? Swamp Thing. I wrote it down.
Yeah, so Ventures into Fear is also known as the Man-Thing run that introduced Howard the Duck. Kind of the opposite. His first comic book appearance, because Howard the Duck also appeared in a magazine. But that's why the Man-Thing is interesting. You got Savage Tales number 1. You got Adventures into Fear, which is his first solo series, right? And then there's a couple of printings also, or volumes of Man-Thing number 1. I think all of them are great because there's a Man-Thing that came out in 1979, and I believe a Man-Thing that came out in 1974. So there was a couple of volumes. So Adventures into Fear number 10 is first solo, obviously Savage number 1. And Justin, what are we talking about as far as price ranges and movement on any of these? What do you think? We'll give an idea of what the collectors can expect to pay if they're looking for these books right now.
So I was going after GPA and also just some eBay prices. So current GPA on a Savage Tales number 1, 9.4, you're looking at about $790. Dropping down to an 8.0 gives you about $395. And right now, actually, there are 2 on eBay, CGC 9.2s. There is one at around $200. There's another one for around $112. And both of those end next couple days.
Justin. So both of those are on my watch list. But that just goes to show you, I would have bought it before I dropped the news.
Hey, man, we're fair and balanced. We will give you the information.
We tell everybody about everything.
So just so you guys know, I just talking to the Black Knight right now, and he is part of that cabal. So when
Illuminati, I want to call it the Illuminati.
Yeah. So when I told you there's a secret cabal of collectors that get information, well, he's the one that disseminates that information. So there's like, how we all have our little private Facebook chats, group chats and everything. They have one that's locked down, and he's the part of the cabal that spreads it and gives it, and other collectors buy it. And here's the interesting thing is you won't hear about this information going out to people. The Black Knight he is got his own money. He's not in it for the money, or else he'd have his own, YouTube channel or whatever. And now, I mean, it's to the point now there's scoopers out there that profit from this, like, Humberto Gonzalez from Heroic Hollywood, who's just a trash site now. By the way, they hired me to be an intern. I told them, no thanks, I'm going to try to do my own thing with Lords and Longbox. That's just a little trivia for you guys. But there's tons of them, Cosmic Book News, which is just a trash website that is basically the one that said, Brie Larson sucks, and all these guys are claim to be scoopers. So now I'm just trying to give you the information that, the scoopers are the real guys that know the inside stuff are saying, a lot of these scoopers aren't giving you the right information. So I just want to pass that on there. So in short, let's wrap it up with Man-Thing, Savage Tales number 1, Adventure into Fear number 10, Man-Thing 1, and Man-Thing 1. I believe there was a more modern run too. So be careful. A lot of time Marvel likes playing with these, and like I posted on Instagram a couple days ago for a Multiple Comic Monday about the Midnight Suns, Spirits of Vengeance, all those titles, man. I think those are those team books are going to get. And speaking of the supernatural shows, what's their second thing up here? We got a little speculation as far as villain spec.
As you know, there's going to be a Ghost Rider TV series that Marvel is doing, and there's some speculation on some of the characters that might be in the show.
Our man TBK, the Black Knight, gave me a nice little nugget about the how far along Ghost Rider TV series is and the villains that are going to appear in it. These are very interesting villains, because one of them he's a little bit all over the place. The featured villains are going to be in Ghost Rider, the Hulu show, are going to be Scarecrow. There's a couple of different iterations of Scarecrow. I have a first appearance of it, but there's a version of Scarecrow that eventually got changed his name to Strawman, and that was right around the Bronze Age. There's an older Scarecrow that appeared way back into Tales of Suspense number 51. The other villain is going to be is someone who's probably was a major player in the comics, probably around 3 or 4 years ago, is the Orb. If you remember the what was that called? The first Sin, original Sin. What was that? The crossover event? Yeah, the original Sin crossover event where it found out that, Nick Fury was doing all this stuff and watching stuff, and the guy, remember Thor, found out he was unworthy. The Orb is that dude that has a big eye as a head. That's basically him. And so I can see that happen. At first, if you were like, Orb, never heard of him. But then I remember that was part of the original Sin storyline where Thor lost his worthiness, where Uatu was killed. Remember that? Uatu, the Watcher, was killed. The Winter Soldier ended up being, and Nick Fury ended up just like, I remember they just stuck him on the moon and he was going to be a Watcher. But Otto, what are some of the first appearances of these two characters that people should look out for?
Of the Orb? What are we? Sorry, guys. I was just paying attention to
Orb
something
and
else.
the Scarecrow.
The Scarecrow.
We set this up all week too.
We did. Somebody's got to help me out with this.
So
First
the
appearance
Ghost
of
Rider, I
this-
put the graphic up. It's been up since we've been talking about this. The
Yeah.
first two are Ghost Rider Volume 6, number 26.
Orb's first appearance is Ghost Rider, Volume 6. Watch
one
out,
is a
there's
variant, and one is the normal cover.
Yeah.
And
So,
then we have the Tales of Suspense 51 is the
I think
first
that's
appearance of Scarecrow.
I think that's a cool book because anytime you can go that far back into a Tales of Suspense book to pick up just an obscure character, I think that's great. That Orb Ghost Rider Volume 6, it's harder than you think to find.
Yeah, I've never seen that.
The variant cover is the inside cover.
I would say he probably got a little bump when the original Sin crossover event happened in Marvel, right? People were like, hey, let me go find out what this character is about. Because I always thought he was kind of goofy, a dude with like a big eyeball. Right. So, Justin, what are we looking at on prices? I got to think the Orb isn't that much at all.
Yeah, the Orb was, you can get anywhere between $5 to $20 if you get like a lot. But I mean, so far as Tales of Suspense, that 51, I mean, that's an old book. I mean, you're looking at an old school Iron Man as well. 9.4's GPA was like $15.60, and then 8.5 actually drops it down to about $475. But on eBay right now, there is a couple VFs for around $90. So if you are speccing, it's not bad.
Yo, what's up, DMC in the place to be? Keep digging in those long boxes. Peace!